Here with the part of the core team, which is made of very professional and skillful people. And as has been said, ENEMO has been deploying its mission since the last July 15. We have a core team, plus we will have about 40, exactly 38 short-term observers deployed in all the municipalities of Montenegro. So we'll have many data to report in the first report after the election day. And so far we had more than 230 meetings with all stakeholders. We met politicians, political party leaders, people from civic society, any mass media, any stakeholder who would meet us is welcome, so we will continue on this. As has been said by my deputy, it is important to underline that this meeting is an interim. It doesn't mean that it doesn't say nothing. In the opposite. As a key point of my brief statement, I can affirm that Montenegrin legislation on the electoral process is overall providing all the necessary for democratic elections. However, there are some parts that are at odds with the international standards. So the country needs some steps forward to have a full process. Moreover, we should also consider the fact that, as in all other countries in the world dealing with the election this period, the COVID has been an issue that has been faced with difficulties, but also with big reaction from most of the agencies, the institutional agencies. So again, thank you for coming, and now I leave the floor to Ms. Kostelec.
In general, the elections are administered professionally, despite the lack of legal certainty regarding some aspects of the electoral process. The State Election Commission operates in an overall transparent manner, while municipal electoral commissions operate professionally and effectively and seem to be prepared for the upcoming elections. However, late changes by the State Election Commission, as well as lack of clarity regarding whether or not all groups of voters will have the opportunity to vote due to COVID-19 pandemic, it may affect the quality of the electoral process. It remains unclear how training for polling boards will be conducted and whether this will affect their readiness for the election day. Regarding voter registration, concerns should be raised that excessive provisions in the law on the right to vote could lead to the deprivation of voting rights. In this case, it is a potentially considerable number of voters in cases where they resided abroad and have only recently, meaning less than 2 years ago, returned to Montenegro to renew their residency in the country. There is also a general perception that there are discrepancies between different databases that compile the voters list and the total population in the country aged 18 or higher. All electoral lists were able to collect the required number of voter signatures and were registered by the State Election Commission within the legal deadline, with the exception of the self-declared Yugoslav National Minority List, even after lodging an appeal to the Constitutional Court. Even though all electoral lists complied with the gender quota requirement, only one national minority list went beyond and included 70% of female candidates, while generally women still remain underrepresented in the election management bodies and public life. Additionally, we note that only one candidate list is led by a woman in the upcoming elections. Now I give the floor to our campaign analyst, Pierre Petier.
Everyone for being here today. Greetings on my side as well. I'd like to start by thanking my colleagues and for what they have presented so far. I will be speaking today regarding our interim report about our observation of the electoral campaign And also I will say a few words about media framework and also about the framework for campaign finance. So I'd like to start by saying that overall, according to our assessment, the legal framework in Montenegro does provide the necessary preconditions for electoral contestants to campaign freely. However, this is an important point that ENEMO would raise concerns regarding the lack of comprehensive regulations on indoor and outdoor campaigning events and limitations on campaigning due to the COVID-19 epidemic. And as a consequence of this, electoral contestants have increased the focus of their campaigns on social networks and online media. But it's important to note that both the epidemic itself and the corresponding health security measures which were adopted may affect the principle of equal opportunity and possibility for candidates and parties to campaign freely. Additionally, serious concerns should be raised regarding the fact that as of the publication of this report, no further specific guidelines or regulation have been published by the State Election Commission or other public authorities regarding safety conditions for campaigning. Overall, ENEMO assessed that limitations in the legal framework on campaigning of state officials, potential abuse of office, and avoiding blurring of lines between parties and state are overall in line with international standards. However, and this is also very important to note, according to ENEMO Observer reports, there are considerable allegations of pressure towards public sector employees, threats of non-renewal of contracts, blocking professional advancement, pressure on employees' families, and threats of demotion in cases of employees refusing to support the ruling coalition. On the other hand, allegations of promises of employment or services as means of indirect vote buying were reported to ENEMO observers in several instances. A word quickly about the media. What ENEMO assessed in its interim report is that overall the legal framework for media, including laws and constitution, generally provide for freedom of speech and freedom of the press. However, ENEMO noted that transparency regarding media ownership is limited and under-regulated, in particular for online and social media. The appearance of state officials used as a means to increase the coverage of lists in which they are running outside the dedicated advertising blocks raises concerns, as it may affect the principle of equality of opportunity, as well as the obligation of impartiality in the media coverage of the electoral campaign. Last but not least, I will speak briefly about the campaign finance framework overall and some of the preliminary conclusions as of the interim report. The 2020 amended legislation has brought the framework for campaign finance overall more in line with international standards and generally complies with Greco anti-corruption standards. ENEMO also noted that the role of the Agency for the Prevention of Corruption and its mandate have been extended to provide effective oversight of campaign finance. ENEMO deems positive the plan published by the APC for controlling and monitoring the financing of political campaigns for these elections. However, and this is also important to note, concerns should be raised regarding the difficulty of implementing actual field controls and supervising possible cases of misuse of public funds and human resources due to the lack of capacity and limited possibilities to prevent or eliminate abuse.